But that being said, maybe they're not as successful as we kind of would assume given the talent in those lineups. And what I'm alluding to is Amen Thompson being, in my opinion, one of the Rockets' best players. You could argue he's their second or third best player, I think, pretty easily already at this point in his career, just given his defensive exploits and his ability to finish at the rim, and just his overall athleticism that everybody knows about at this point. That being said, if you incorporate either Tari Eason or Jabari Smith Jr. into the Rockets lineup, they do not miss a beat if they relative to whether they had Amen Thompson. With Jabari Smith Jr. in their starting lineup, Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun. In 917 possessions, the Rockets are plus 8.3 per 100. And then Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Tari Eason, Alperen Sengun in only 170 possessions, they're plus 12.4 points per 100 possessions better than their opponent. So that's both lineups are extremely good, and that is without one of their top players in those lineups. So how do we explain that? And do you think there's something to this as it relates to what the Rockets should do moving forward? And also, I mean, I didn't even say this, but if we put Amen Thompson in there, then we have Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and Alperen Sengun. I don't think a lot of people would recognize that in nearly 500 possessions, the Rockets are minus 8.5 per 100. So that is not good for a starting lineup at all. So what is your take on this, and what does it mean for them?
Yeah, it's interesting because what happened was Jabari Smith Jr. went out. The Rockets kept winning, and they kept playing well when Amen Thompson was on the court on the whole, because Udoka is so good at staggering. He's not like running the starting lineup into the ground. But the starting lineups quietly got a lot worse, took a huge... And I think what that tells us is against starters, and at least right now, against starters, and specifically in a playoff environment when you're going to be scouted against, you're going to want the opponents are going to hone in on your weaknesses. You just need that fourth shooter at least with Sengun. When Sengun is your primary offensive engine, you want him surrounded by as many options as possible. This isn't to say that Amen Thompson in the dunker spot, Amen Thompson creating offense from the perimeter, Amen Thompson's insane defensive ability and his ability to create transition opportunities pretty much just out of dust. These things are all amazingly valuable right now. This bears out in the impact data right now. He's not just like a negative player because he can't shoot. He's a very valuable player right now. But I think that right now his best role is in that 25 to 30 minute per game range off the bench, splitting, not full stagger, but playing some with Sengun against bench units, and then some hopefully with a little bit more shooting off the bench. And you want either Jabari Smith Jr. or maybe even just Tari Eason in the starting lineup. I know that in Houston circles, or at least I think Houston fans, comment below and correct me if I'm wrong. I think right now the debates are Jabari Smith Jr. versus Amen Thompson as the fifth starter, but I don't know how many people are talking about Tari Eason. He's so good at basketball, XJ. He's incredible. I think there's a solid argument for him being the fifth starter.
That would be my choice. I think Tari Eason is right now one of the most underrated players in the league right now. Just given everything that he adds, I think that, I mean, you and I talk about this a lot. Guys that don't have the makings of, an elite first option and off the dribble guy, or a guy who's going to create for themselves either via the dribble or in the post, who's going to create for others via collapsing defenses and driving and kicking. Guys who don't do those things just often get underrated, especially when they're really, really good at everything else. And Tari Eason is almost elite at everything else. He's a great on-ball defender, great off-ball helper, great at defending the post, can protect the rim a little bit, can knock down shots when he's open. Is just a menace all around. And so I think he basically complements that starting lineup so well in honestly even better than Jabari Smith Jr., given that Alperen Şengün's rim protection numbers are really good this year, actually. And so I do think with having, Tari Eason, you are not losing as much as you would going from Amen Thompson in terms of the perimeter defense and something that's so critical to what Houston does, which is keeping ball handlers out of the paint, making life difficult for them. You now have Tari Eason, Dylan Brooks, and Fred VanVleet. Good luck.
One thought I'd love to add to that is, and this might be controversial, I hope it's not. I love Steven Adams. Seems like a hilarious guy. All-time rebounder. I saw some tweet the other day that was like, the 3 of the top 5 rebounding teams of the last 15 years have been 3 different franchises that Steven Adams was on, the Grizzlies, Thunder, and now the Rockets.
That's so
he's just a vacuum when it comes to rebounding. I'm skeptical at how playable he's going to be in a big-time playoff series. And what does that mean? We know Udoka is going to want to maintain rim protection and size. He's not going to want to go super small. Making Eason the 5th starter allows Jabari Smith Jr. to play a little bit next to Şengün as a backup power forward, but also be their full-time backup center and have him as the lone big in all the non-Şengün minutes. I think it makes that rotation a little bit easier and a little bit more natural if you start Eason and have Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. coming off the bench. And with Jabari Smith Jr. at center, now all of a sudden you have Amen Thompson and 3 other wings or guards who can shoot. Amen Thompson's your only non-shooter when Şengün's on the bench. What does that lineup look like? That lineup with Amen Thompson as the only non-shooter, you get all of Amen Thompson's strengths amplified, and I think it's easier to mute his weakness a little bit more. So I think it's a win-win here if you start Eason and put Jabari Smith in that backup center role, and then let him in the games he's cooking slide down to power forward next to Şengün.